Okay, let's just jump right in. We are living in an age that is just drowning in leaks, right? Every week it feels like there's a new data dump, some huge expose, and the whole world naturally stops to obsess over the content.
Over the gossip, the he said, she said.
Exactly. It's what we do.
Yeah.
But for this deep dive, we are going to do something, well, pretty different. We're looking at the so-called 88 pages, that infamous dossier, and we're going to completely ignore what's inside it.
That's a difficult exercise, given how much noise those pages made. But the content, strictly speaking, it's a distraction.
Right, and that's the entire premise of our source material today. We're looking at a file, it's labeled Shadow Files, Episode 2, and it does this amazing forensic analysis, not of the scandal, but of the origin of the scandal. We're not asking what was leaked, we're asking who actually had the power to put this very specific document together in the first place.
It completely shifts the focus from, politics to mechanics. We have this idea of leaks as these spontaneous events, like lightning just strikes and information appears.
Yeah, out of nowhere.
But the truth is, every single piece of sensitive information has a chain of custody. It has a birthplace. And if you look closely enough at the document itself, it tells you exactly where it came from.
So our mission today is basically to play detective. We're using the forensic clues from that Shadow Files report to build a profile, psychological professional of the leaker.
Yeah.
And I love how the source frames this. It's like a high-stakes logic puzzle.
It is. It's a process of elimination. You start with this huge pool of suspects. Thousands of people. Employees, contractors, anyone with a security badge.
Right.
And then you start applying filters based on the evidence. And the goal is just to whittle that number down and down and down.
Without giving the game away right at the start, the source suggests that when you apply all those filters, that number goes from thousands to something just shockingly small.
We end up in the single digits.
Which is just a wild thought. Okay, so let's start with filter number 1, the nature of the data. When we look at these 88 pages, what are we actually seeing? Because the Shadow Files analysis makes a huge deal about the quality of the information.
This is, I think, the most important first step. You have to understand what this data is. Think about an average leak or just a corporate rumor. If you or I heard something at the office, we'd say something like, "Oh, I heard the VP was yelling in a meeting last week."
It's a story. It's based on memory.
Correct. It's subjective, it's impressionistic, but the 88 pages weren't like that. They weren't a narrative, they were just cold, granular data points.
What do you mean by granular?
The source highlights this over and over. We're talking about exact timestamps, down to the second, logs of keycard swipes showing where people were, actual transcripts of conversations from rooms that were supposed to be secure.
Whoa, so this wasn't someone telling a story later, this was someone holding the receipts.
Hard receipts. And that, right there, applies our first filter. It immediately rules out the casual observer. It rules out the executive assistant who overhears a call. It rules out the intern, the janitor.
Anyone on the periphery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To have access to the specific timestamp of a secure door opening on a random Tuesday, you need more than just curiosity. You need a very specific level of system clearance.
Okay, so we've set a baseline for our suspect. We need someone deep inside the infrastructure. But that brings us to what the source calls the illusion of many. My first thought is, well, even high clearance has to be hundreds of people in a big organization, investigators, analysts, senior VPs.
That's the common assumption, and it makes sense, but it shows a misunderstanding of how modern secure systems are actually built. We think top secret or admin access is like a master key that opens every single door.
But it's not.
In a properly secured environment, especially one handling sensitive data, almost never.
And this is where the idea of silos comes in, right?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Institutional security is all designed around compartmentalization. It's the old need-to-know principle, but it's enforced by computer code.
So if you're a senior investigator looking at, say, a personnel issue in Department A,
the system itself physically blocks you from seeing the financial databases for Department B, not because you aren't trusted, but because of compliance, legal liability, insider threat mitigation, all of it.
the system forces you to stay in your lane. Finance people see money, HR sees personnel files, operations sees logistics.
And those lanes almost never cross. In fact, if they do, it's supposed to trigger an alarm. An audit flag goes up somewhere.
Okay, which brings us to the overlap anomaly. This was the part of the source material where, for me, the technical details got really fascinating. The 88 pages document, it broke the rules of these silos.
This is the smoking gun. The Shadow Files analysis points out that the dossier didn't just contain one type of secret, It had financial ledgers from one secure database. It had operational logs, like physical movement data, from a totally different server. And it had personnel files.
So, let me play devil's advocate. Couldn't a CEO have that kind of access?
Yeah.
Or, someone on the board? Surely the people at the very top can see everything.
It's a great question. But surprisingly, the answer is usually no. A CEO or a board member, they see summaries. They see reports that are generated from the raw data. They almost never have the direct, what you'd call super user login to actually query the raw server logs for a specific door swipe at 2 in the morning. They look at the dashboard. They don't look at the code behind it.
So the CEO is actually ruled out because they're too high up to be in the weeds.
In many ways, yes. The CEO asks for information. They don't go in and pull it themselves. The person we're profiling here is someone who has the technical privilege to bridge those gaps. We are looking for a super user with overlap.
Someone whose job requires them to be in the financial database at 9 a.m. and the security log server at 10 a.m.
Yes, that is the key. And that narrows the field drastically. We are no longer looking for management. We're looking for what? Deep infrastructure people?
Like who?
Precisely. You're talking about auditors, high-level system administrators, maybe a chief compliance officer doing a very specific kind of internal review. We've just gone from a suspect pool of thousands to, maybe 20 or 30 people in the whole organization?
Wow. Just by looking at the structure of the data, that's incredible.
Yeah.
But the investigation, it doesn't stop there. It moves from the what to the how. The source spends a lot of time analyzing the forensics of style.
And this is where we shift from the digital profile to the psychological one.
Yeah, the source describes the document as being clean, paradoxically clean. Can you unpack that? What does a clean leak tell us about the person who wrote it?
Well, you have to compare it to the typical leaks we see throughout history. Think about a whistleblower who acts out of, moral outrage, or a disgruntled employee acting out of anger.
Right.
Those data dumps are usually messy. They're chaotic. You just get raw files dumped in a big pile. You see notes that were written in a hurry, maybe some emotional language, a disjointed story.
It's a crime of passion. It's impulsive. It's, I'm mad, I'm taking this, and I'm dumping it online.
It's human.
Yeah.
But the 88 pages were sterile. The analysis points out there were no draft versions included. There were no internal contradictions where one fact didn't line up with another. The formatting was perfect and consistent from page 1 to page 88.
So they didn't just grab a bunch of files and run, they curated it.
It was a project. That's the key psychological jump. This wasn't someone having a bad day and just hitting print. This was someone who sat down, probably over weeks or even months, and carefully compiled this dossier. They organized it, they checked it, they removed anything that didn't fit the core narrative.
That implies a level of coldness that is, almost more disturbing than an angry outburst.
Yeah.
It's so calculated.
It suggests detachment. And that brings us to the central theory of the shadow file source. They call it the gatekeeper theory.
The silent gatekeeper. I want to spend a minute on this because it feels like this archetype that we just don't talk about enough. Who are these people?
Gatekeepers are the people in any organization whose job isn't to create value or make sales, but to control flow. They are the archivists, the records managers, the deep-level IT admins. Their entire job is to decide who gets access to what and when.
And the really scary part, according to the source, is that they're basically invisible.
They hide in plain sight. And this is why the cleanliness and the overlap point directly to them. If a sales rep suddenly starts trying to download terabytes of data from the HR server, a big red light starts flashing in the security operations center. It's anomalous behavior.
But if the archivist does it?
The system doesn't even blink. From the algorithm's point of view, the archivist is supposed to be touching those files. They have permission to move, copy, and store that exact data. It's literally in their job description.
So our suspect could be building this weaponized dossier right in the middle of the workday on their company computer, and to any observer, it would just look like they were doing their job.
It is the perfect cover. And because they're often in these support roles, not the rock star executives, nobody pays any attention to them socially. They're just part of the furniture.
Okay, so this brings us to the question of why. We've profiled a cold, calculated, invisible super user. But usually when people leak things, they want something. They want to be the hero, right? They want the title whistleblower.
Yeah.
They want to burn the house down.
Usually, yes. You expect to see the manifesto, you expect the press conference the next day. But here, there's just silence. The source really emphasizes this. The 88 pages didn't come with a note. The author didn't sign their name. They didn't go to the press.
So if it wasn't for fame and it wasn't an immediate burn it all down move, what was the point?
The source speculates that the primary goal was, first, documentation, and second, potentially, leverage.
Leverage is a heavy word. Are you suggesting this wasn't even meant for the public at first?
Well, look at the structure, the precision, the undeniable proof. It reads like an insurance policy. It reads like a document you compile and you keep in your back pocket.
To what end?
To ensure your own safety, or to force a very specific outcome behind closed doors. You know, if you fire me, this gets released. Or if you go ahead with this plan, just know that I have the receipts.
So the fact that it eventually leaked to the public suggests that the deal, whatever it was, it went south.
Or that the insurance policy had to be cashed in. It changes the entire profile from a moral crusader to a strategic player. This wasn't a protest, it was a chess move.
Now I want to talk about what happened after the leak, because the shadow files analysis tracks the fallout, and they identify something they call the disappearance pattern. This part felt very spy novel to me, but let's ground it. What actually happened to people?
Well, after the leak, there was obviously chaos. But the source tracks a few specific individuals, people who are never publicly named, never arrested, never charged with anything, who just vanished from the professional world.
They just went dark.
They resigned quietly. They, moved to a cabin somewhere. Their LinkedIn profiles just stopped updating.
Is that an admission of guilt? Or is it just fear?
Legally, of course, it proves absolutely nothing. But psychologically, the source argues this is proof of recognition.
Recognition.
What do you mean? Okay, imagine you are one of the, say, 3 or 4 people in that single-digit circle we talked about. You have the access, you know the systems. Suddenly, this document drops. You read it. And even if you didn't write it yourself, you look at the timestamps, you look at the data types, and you realize,
I know who could have done this.
I know who did this. Or, at the very least, I know there are only 3 people on Earth capable of doing this, and I'm one of them.
And you realize that any investigator is going to come to the exact same conclusion.
You realize you are in the blast radius. You see your own reflection in that document. The system is about to start hunting for people with your exact professional profile. So the rational survival move isn't to fight it, it's to disappear. To get off the board before the pieces start to fall.
That's silence.
Yeah.
It's a deafening kind of confirmation. It's like, the birds going quiet in the forest right before a predator shows up.
That is a very, very good analogy. The silence itself becomes a piece of data.
So let's synthesize all this.
Yeah.
We started with a global scandal, a cast of thousands of potential suspects. Using the forensic profile from shadow files, where do we actually land?
We land in a very claustrophobic place. We have stripped away the casual employees, the managers, the executives, even outside hackers. We're left with a profile of a high-level gatekeeper, someone with super user privileges that let them see across all those compliance silos.
And someone who compiled this data with cold precision. No emotion, no mess.
Someone who used their legitimate day-to-day job as perfect camouflage to build a weaponized dossier, probably for leverage.
And as the source concludes, that leaves us with a suspect list of
single digits. In an organization of that size, there are probably only 3 or 4 human beings who fit every single one of those criteria.
It really challenges how we think about risk, doesn't it? We spend all this money guarding the front door from hackers or watching for unhappy employees. But this profile suggests the real vulnerability is the quiet person who already holds all the keys.
The person whose loyalty we just assume is absolute because, hey, we're the ones who gave them the keys in the first place.
There is one final lingering mystery, though. The Shadow Files episode wraps up with a question that I think is just crucial. We know the who, or at least the profile of the who. We know the how the system overlap. But we don't know the why now.
The timing question.
Yeah, right. If this was a leverage file, if this was an insurance policy just sitting on an encrypted hard drive for months, maybe years, why did it drop on that specific day at that specific time?
And that's the unsolved variable. We already established this wasn't an impulsive act, so the release must have been just as calculated as the compilation.
The source really teases this, doesn't it? It suggests that the timing is what reveals the true intent.
It implies that our gatekeepers felt their control slipping. An insurance policy is only useful if you're still in a position to negotiate. If you sense the walls are closing in, or maybe a purge is coming.
You might decide to burn the house down on your way out the door.
Or maybe the thing you were holding the file back to prevent finally happened. The leak marks the moment that the strategy shifted from hold to release.
It definitely changes how I'm going to look at the next big data leak. Instead of just reading the headlines, I think I'm going to be looking for timestamps. I'm going to be looking for the overlap.
You should. And you should always be asking yourself, who is the silent gatekeeper here, and what finally forced their hand?
A pretty provocative thought to leave you with. The source material indicates that the next part of their series is going to look at that exact tipping point, the moment the silence became impossible.
The moment the leverage failed and the weapon had to be fired. That's usually where the real human story is.
We will absolutely be watching for that. Until then, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the mechanics of the shadows. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and we will catch you next time.